margin that you have to get out. So that's how we're gonna operate, and we're gonna try to stay on time as much as we can. Our first speaker is Collin Farrell from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'll let him introduce his own topic and talk rather than listen to me. So,
thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, so thank you all for being here today. Today we'll start off the next generation of spawning by going back in time and looking at old newspapers to see if there's any evidence of lake sturgeon spawning that we don't know about in Lake Erie. So lake sturgeon were abundant in the Great Lakes, Mississippi, and Hudson Bay drainages. But of course, today I'll be talking specifically about Lake Erie, Lake Sturgeon, and Lake Erie was likely home to one of the largest, if not the largest population of lake sturgeon. Depending on which model you like, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 or 1 million adults were thought to be roaming the lake prior to commercial fishing. Now here's a figure from Suika et al. 2018 showing the commercial harvest of lake sturgeon in Lake Erie. You see a rapid increase, peak of the recorded data is in 1885, and then you see the rapid decline, collapse by the 1920s. Some harvest, very little. You can see little bumps there up until the 60s. So at the peak of lake sturgeon commercial fisheries in Lake Erie in 1885, nearly 80% of that harvest was occurring in New York waters. And this is according to a report of the U.S. Fish Commission back in those days. So there's some knowledge about where lake sturgeon may have been spawning in the New York waters of Lake Erie, Buffalo, Cattaraugus Creek, the Walnut Silver Creek system, and then Dunkirk as well. But I think Doug Carlson put it really well in his 95 article on lake sturgeon in New York, and this is true throughout their range, is that our understanding of lake sturgeon is fairly incomplete, because they were gone before good science had a chance to be done on them. So today there's only one known spawning location of lake sturgeon in Lake Erie in the New York waters. So colleagues at the DEC and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Northeast Fisheries Science Center, along with some of our folks too, have been helping out on studies on this population, over the past decade or so. And it's estimated that there's currently around 900 adults in this area using Buffalo as a spawning area. So quick little overview on spawning biology of lake sturgeon. We typically think of lake sturgeon as being river spawners. That's where a lot of the science has been done on lake sturgeon, but there are some early accounts suggesting that lake sturgeon spawned in lakes as well. But we don't really know a whole lot about that. Like many other species, lake sturgeon are lithophilic. They like gravel, cobble type substrates for spawning. And then here's some metrics of types of conditions that they prefer. Again, these are mostly river spawning, all river spawning populations. But I think the most important one I want to point out here is temperature. So the peak spawning typically occurs between 11.5 to 16 degrees Celsius in the spring. So this is water temperature data from the Buffalo water intake going back nearly a century, and this is a subsurface reading at about 9 meters below the surface. So this window in Lake Erie is typically late May to mid-June for lake sturgeon spawning. So a little bit about what we did kind of to poke at this question. We use newspapers.com, aptly named website to search and digitize newspaper collections, and it's great. It has you can just search it and find your article. Downside, you have to pay $20 a month, so I just ate that because I was really interested in this. And the other downside of it is that the search engine is not very good, so you can see our search terms were very vague, just sturgeon, because like Boolean kind of inclusion, exclusion kind of stuff wasn't working well at all. So limited to the 2 counties in New York on the shore of Lake Erie. We got a lot of hits, especially in Erie County where Buffalo is, but we were only able to get through almost 18,000. There's still a lot more to get through, but so that takes us up to 1910 in Erie County, and many fewer articles in Chautauqua County, so we were able to look at them all. And this is what a lot of those hits look like. I would say 50-60% of the hits on these articles were advertisements for sturgeon being sold at fish markets. A lot of hits on people too, a lot of politicians. I thought this one stood out to me. There was a performer that was the talk of the town in 1889 in Buffalo. Had a series of shows and she played the piano with her toes. And then a couple other interesting little tidbits. I thought this was appropriate since we are at the home of baseball here. That apparently sturgeon noses made for really great baseballs. And very lively baseballs. Kids would wrap them up with yarn and hit them around the yard. All right, so into the meat of the talk. We're going to start in Buffalo. We're going to work our way down Route 5, near the Pennsylvania border. So it's going to be a bit of a ride in the truck today. But of course, we do know that sturgeon are still spawning in Buffalo. So kind of just to set the rest of the talk up as well. This article from 1885. That yellow line is a lot smaller than I thought it would be. But basically it says that this article says that lake sturgeon spawn in June, that makes sense, along the rocky ledges of the eastern end of the lake. So to me that means like reefy kind of habitat, things like that. Another interesting thing in this article is that apparently the favorite method that the fishermen in this area were using to get sturgeon was grappling irons. And if you're thinking that it looked like that, that's exactly correct. They were literally these fish were so thick in there that they could literally drag sharpened grapples and land them on their boats. And they were extremely successful using this method and harvesting thousands of fish this way every year. And now this article here, it's not really talking specifically about sturgeon, but it's talking about a reef called Sturgeon Reef. It was being surveyed as a potential site to build a break wall in Buffalo. Now, if you go through all these old maps, you don't really see any indication of a sturgeon reef. But if you follow, if you triangulate the bearings and distances that are outlined in this article, it appears that Horseshoe Reef was once called Sturgeon Reef, likely due to the fact that sturgeon were using this area quite a bit. Which is really cool because we still see that today. This is results from a study led by Jonah Withers, telemetry study in the Buffalo Harbor area for sturgeon.